Hey Marvel fans, this is Chris Boltz and I'm coming in with a recap of the events of Fantastic Four First Steps over its second week. Now, we obviously got some bad news about the performance of the movie in general, but I think there's a lot more going on with everything with regards to Fantastic Four and the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general. But before I do get into the content, do make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. All that stuff really helps me out. Now, this article that we're looking at right here is coming courtesy of comicbookmovie.com. The Fantastic Four First Steps suffers an even bigger second weekend drop than estimated with a $38.7 million haul. Now, it was estimated to be a 66% drop, which is bad in and of itself. But after the final tally was taken, it came in at a 67% drop. That is actually atrocious. And if we go in here and look at the Twitter or X post that was attached to that comic book movie article from a Luis Fernando, he says right here that actuals even lower for the Fantastic Four with one of the biggest drops in MCU history. And it came in at a 67.1% drop. In comparison to Superman, that was a 53% drop from its second week. Thor: Love and Thunder did worse than Fantastic Four First Steps, actually at 67.7%. Far From Home, which is a 51% drop, and then Homecoming, which had a 62% drop. But remember, those two movies were actually during the phase 1 through 3 period of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that was when it was really at its peak. If we go down and look at the list of, and then I'm gonna get back to this on a different part. You go back down and look at this list of MCU second weekend drops, and we see that Fantastic Four First Steps is near the bottom, about 6 places from the bottom. So that really is just a big sting in the eye of the Fantastic Four First Steps, which, despite the fact that it had really good glowing reviews, 87% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 92% from the audience, really good word of mouth. The thing is, though, nobody just wanted to show up and see the movie. Nobody wanted to go see Fantastic Four First Steps. Not women, not families. Once again, the trouble with Fantastic Four is that it was heavily front-loaded. Mostly Marvel fans went to go see these movies. Of those Marvel fans, the majority of them were men, which is always going to be the case when it comes to any type of action movie, especially comic book action movies. It's mostly going to be men that go to see these movies. It's not going to be women, it's not going to be families, it's just going to be men. Now, does that mean that there are not going to be some families and some women that won't be interested in these movies? No, of course not, because if we go back to the Luis Fernando Twitter post, obviously all these movies right here at the top definitely relied upon a lot of families and women going to go see those movies. Got Deadpool and Wolverine right there, which cleared over $1 billion. That means even though it was a rated R film, women and families went to go see that. I don't know why families would want to go see that movie, but that's what happened with that one. Then we obviously go over here to Guardians of the Galaxy 3. That one had a very slow start, but it started picking up towards the end when word of mouth really reached out. Black Panther was huge. Doctor Strange, The Avengers. So yes, absolutely, a lot of families are going to see the movie. And also, going back to Superman, Superman's domestic box office is phenomenal. And the reason why it's phenomenal is because family and women were going to go see that movie. It wasn't doing well internationally, but it did well enough domestically such that it is now closing in on the $600 million point. That still puts it in flop territory. It definitely is not outpacing Man of Steel or a lot of other Zack Snyder projects. So it still is not successful by any stretch of the imagination. However, Warner Brothers have already come out and said that they would be fine with this movie only making $500 million if it is able to go ahead and help launch James Gunn's DC universe, which it definitely has done. So why is it that Fantastic Four, despite the marketing, despite the praise, despite the popularity of the series, why is it doing so poorly? I posit that this is what happens when you absolutely go in there and you destroy your brand. Now, we notice right here on this Twitter post that there are almost, I want to say there's probably at least 30 projects right here. And these are only the movies. These are only the movies that are being considered. But what if I told you that when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are more than 50 projects that have been completed from its beginning back in 2008 with Iron Man under Paramount up until Fantastic Four First Steps, which was released a couple of weeks ago. Well, go to this article right here, ranking the MCU, every Marvel Studios movie and show from worst to best. And we go down here and we look, and at number 54, they have Secret Invasion. So this right here is taking into consideration all of the projects that happened under the Marvel Studios banner. And you see right here in the first line, they got 37 feature films, 15 streaming series, and 2 TV specials for a total of 54 projects. People were expected to watch all this stuff to try to stay up to date on what's going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was one of the big problems with the comics. One of the big problems with the comics is that there are so many different threads, so many different restarts and reboots and remakes and swaps of characters that people didn't know what to follow. No one knows a really good starting point. And even to this day, if you ask any type of comics expert, what would be a really good starting point for a certain comic book? Like, we'll just use Spider-Man, for instance. If you are a true fan, you would probably say, hey, you know what? We start with the Amazing Fantasy number 15. That's when Spider-Man made his initial debut. That debuted all the way back in the 60s. But no, there are different types of Spider-Man. And in fact, out of an expert's mouth should be, well, what Spider-Man are you looking for? Because we got Ben Reilly Spider-Man, we have Peter Parker Spider-Man, we have Gwen Stacy, that of course she's Spider-Girl, we have Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, we have Miles Morales. So there's all these different kinds of characters that you have to ask. First, you got to get that out of the way. And then once they do that, okay, well, this is where you want to go ahead and start. Nobody wants to go ahead and do all that kind of homework. And you got 54 projects right here. Now, I'm not going to go over the quality of this list because I'm pretty sure they probably have something stupid at number 1. Avengers Endgame. Like I said, something stupid at number 1. Avengers Endgame is an absolutely terrible movie, but there's 54 projects that you have to consider before you get to Endgame. And some of these things obviously happen after Endgame. And this is interesting. He put Infinity War at number 12. What in the world? I digress. Like I said, this is not that type of video. But this also speaks to the issue. After Avengers Endgame, a lot of people just checked out. They said, oh, the story's been told. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and check out and go and be done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe because the story has been told. But instead of Marvel taking its winnings and just putting the franchise on ice for a little bit, for about 4 or 5 years maybe, they instead decided to keep on continuing. And because they continued, they kept coming out with project after project, and each project started getting worse than the last project. And then there was diminishing returns setting in, not only for just the amount of money these movies were making, but also in the terms of quality and ultimately in the desirability to see these types of movies. I think all of that had a really big impact on how Fantastic Four First Steps performed in the movie theaters. Never mind the fact that they also have an actor in there by the name of Pedro Pascal who has to appear in almost everything. So we just do a quick Google search right here. These are projects that were just in 2025 alone. He was in The Last of Us Season 2. He was in Fantastic Four First Steps, Materialists, Eddington, and then he will be in The Mandalorian and Grogu, the upcoming Star Wars movie. Now, it says TBD 2025, but I think that's been pushed back to 2026. Be that as it may, people are exhausted with Pedro Pascal. He's in pretty much everything. So that also probably played a role in the way this movie has performed. Not the major role or anything like that, because I think the major thing that really played a role in the performance of the Fantastic Four is just Marvel Cinematic, or rather Disney Marvel, ruining its reputation because they had decided to go ahead and pursue all kinds of different things in these movies that should not have been pursued. It was already stated back right around towards the end of phase 3, Kevin Feige definitely said he wanted more women to be featured in these movies, more women heroes than male heroes. Now, on its face, none of us have a problem with female heroes per se, but the way they went about introducing these new female heroes was to go ahead and replace the existing male hero with the female hero. And nobody wants that. You need to create new original characters. Nobody wanted Kate Bishop as Hawkeye in place of Clint Barton Hawkeye. Nobody wanted Jennifer Walters She-Hulk in place of the Hulk. Well, then again, maybe in place of Mark Ruffalo Hulk, we probably would prefer Jennifer Walters Hulk. But we didn't want the characters being replaced. We wanted them to be added in addition to keeping the existing Marvel heroes. And then also Disney Marvel made one of the most atrocious decisions, which is to go in there and race swap Captain America, take a really good character in the form of Falcon, take that identity from Falcon and transition Sam Wilson to becoming Captain America. That didn't work at all. And as you can see, when you go over here and take a look at this list again, from Luis Fernandez over on X, you see that Captain America Brave New World suffered a larger drop-off than Fantastic Four First Steps. But the sad thing here is, even though it had a larger drop-off than Fantastic Four First Steps, it is wholly possible that Captain America Brave New World will make more money than Fantastic Four First Steps. I think Captain America Brave New World made a total of $483 million at the box office, whereas Fantastic Four is currently sitting at $367 million. So if this type of performance continues, where it's going to have these big drop-offs, which I think is probably going to happen, it is entirely possible that Captain America Brave New World will make more money than Fantastic Four First Steps, despite the fact that Fantastic Four First Steps is a fundamentally better movie and more sound than Captain America Brave New World. However, Fantastic Four First Steps still does not escape the antics of Disney Marvel. Now, in my review, I gave it an 8 out of 10, but I did point out that there was a couple of scenes that feature this one right here in Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, that are just completely girl boss in nature. Now, there's enough time that's passed. One of the spoilers, she decides to go out into space and fight while she's pregnant. She's nearly 8, I think she's probably 9 months pregnant at the time she goes out into space. Like, wait a minute, no, woman, you should be staying home and nursing that baby. It makes no sense for a pregnant woman to go into battle at any point in time. But of course, our modern day, you can't say such things or anything like that because you'd be considered misogynistic, even though it's objectively true to tell a woman, hey, it's okay for you to take it easy when you're 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant, hell, even 7 months pregnant, 6 months pregnant. Take it easy, stay at home. Another point, at the end of the movie, instead of a team dynamic being employed when they're fighting Galactus, instead, Sue Storm uses all of her invisible powers to push back the nearly 200-foot tall, probably more than 500 tons, Galactus with the greatest of ease. Meanwhile, Johnny Storm and Reed Richards and the Thing are basically just sidelined. I mean, Invisible Woman throws a command to Reed Richards, hey, go save Franklin Richards, go save our baby. Like, no, woman, how about this? You're an invisible woman. Why don't you go ahead and you put an invisible shield around your baby and bring the baby back? And you go protect the baby while the men are fighting Galactus. Poor team dynamic that was employed in this particular movie. There's just been a lot of missteps that Marvel had made that really contributed to the downfall of this movie. Most importantly, it's just the fact that they have decided that they would rather ruin their reputation by putting gender politics, social messaging, and all kinds of other irrelevant stuff into their movies than actually delivering good content. The content they delivered was too much homework was involved, and the people just got sick and tired of it, such that this movie now has just been completely impacted by it. And it doesn't bode well for Avengers Doomsday. Fantastic Four once again just doing pretty poorly in the box office, all because of the missteps of Disney Marvel, and they have no one to blame but themselves. And this is where I give my admonition to everybody. You only get one reputation, and you need to do everything you can to protect it, because once you lose your reputation, it's hard to get it back. Make sure you guys do like, share, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. All that good stuff helps me out. Jump down in the comments and let me know what you guys think about all of this. And remember, this is Chris Bolts signing off, and I will catch you guys in the next video. You take it easy.